Welcome back to our channel. Today we unravel the haunting story of Ann Woodward, a woman who seemed to have it all, but lived a life filled with turmoil and tragedy. From her humble beginnings in Kansas to becoming a socialite, mingling with New York's elite, Ann's life appeared to be a fairy tale. But beneath the glamour, her story took a shocking and deadly turn, culminating in betrayal, scandal, and heartbreak. This is the tale of a woman who went from living the American dream to enduring the ultimate nightmare. Ann Woodward, born Angeline Lucille Crowell on December 12, 1915, in the quiet, unassuming heartland of Kansas. She was the product of small-town life, but even as a child, Ann dreamed of escaping her humble beginnings. Her ambitions were larger than life, and she carried a relentless determination to carve out a place for herself in a world far removed from the simplicity of her early years. By the time she reached her early 20s, Ann's hunger for success had propelled her to New York City, a glittering metropolis that promised opportunity but demanded resilience. Reinventing herself, she adopted the name Ann Eden, a move that symbolized her commitment to creating a new identity, one that reflected sophistication and allure. This wasn't just a name change, it was a declaration that she would no longer be confined by her. Ann's natural beauty and undeniable charisma quickly caught the attention of influential circles. She secured work as a model for the prestigious John Robert Powers agency, a significant achievement in an era when modeling was becoming an art form that required more than just good looks. Her features, glossy hair, big eyes, and full lips, captivated audiences and photographers alike. These attributes made her a standout in a sea of hopefuls, helping her climb the ladder in the competitive world of New York fashion. But Ann didn't stop there. By the late 1930s, she had transitioned from modeling to radio acting, a field that demanded not only beauty, but also a voice capable of captivating an audience. She excelled in this medium, landing prominent roles and earning the paradoxical title of the most beautiful girl in radio. While her face was unseen by her listeners, her voice carried the glamour and mystique that radio dramas thrived upon. What's remarkable is how Ann leveraged her beauty and talents into a career that was as much about perception as it was about skill. She wasn't just another model or actress. She was a calculated visionary who knew how to craft an image that would resonate with the public. This phase of her life marked the beginning of her transformation from a small-town dreamer into a woman of ambition and intrigue, setting the stage for the dramatic highs and lows that would define the rest of her life. Ann's early journey isn't just a story of reinvention, it's a testament to her ability to adapt and thrive in a world that demanded constant reinvention. Her drive to rise above her origins not only shaped her career but also laid the foundation for the glamorous yet tumultuous path that would later make her infamous. Ann Woodward's early years in New York were marked by determination and a willingness to navigate the city's complexities. But her path to success was far from straightforward. While she had beauty and charisma, the glitzy facade of opportunity masked a grueling reality. Ann had to fight for every inch of her place in a competitive and unforgiving world. By her mid-20s, Ann found herself working as a showgirl at Fifi's Monte Carlo nightclub, a hotspot for the city's wealthy and powerful elite. For Ann, this wasn't just a job. It was a gateway to the world of influence and affluence she longed to be part of. The nightclub, with its glittering clientele, was a stage where ambition met opportunity, and Ann knew how to make herself stand out. It was at Fifi's Monte Carlo that fate brought her into contact with William Woodward Sr., a wealthy banker from one of New York's most respected old money families. Rumors swirled that Ann Woodward Sr. began an affair, a liaison that, if true, underscored her boldness and determination to secure a foothold in high society. Whether calculated or coincidental, this connection would change the course of her life. Through William Woodward Sr., Ann was introduced to his son, William Billy Woodward Jr., a man who seemed to embody every quality Ann could have ever dreamed of. Billy was more than just young and handsome. He was a decorated Navy officer, having earned accolades for his bravery during World War II, and the sole heir to one of New York's most illustrious family fortunes. To Ann, Billy represented not just a romantic prospect, but a pathway into the upper echelons of New York society, a world she had long coveted, but could never fully access. However, this seemingly perfect connection was fraught with challenges from the very beginning. Billy's position as the heir to a powerful and old money family meant his every action was scrutinized, not just by society, but also by his family. At the center of this scrutiny was his mother, Elizabeth Woodward, a woman whose influence loomed large over the family. Elizabeth was no ordinary matriarch. She was sharp, calculating, and fiercely protective of the Woodward name. To her, Ann was little more than an opportunist, a woman whose beauty and charm masked an insatiable ambition to climb the social ladder. Elizabeth made no effort to conceal her disdain for Ann. From the moment they met, she dismissed her as a gold digger, a woman who could bring nothing but scandal to the family. Her judgment wasn't just whispered behind closed doors. It was wielded openly, adding tension and hostility to every interaction. For Ann, this wasn't just a personal slight, it was a declaration of war, a challenge to prove that she belonged in the glittering world she had fought so hard to enter. Billy, caught in the middle, faced his own internal conflict. On one hand, he was deeply captivated by Ann's beauty, charm, and resilience, qualities that set her apart from the other women of his social circle. On the other hand, he was torn between his feelings for her and his loyalty to his mother and family's expectations. The societal scrutiny that followed their relationship only heightened this tension, making their connection as much a defiant statement as it was a love affair. What makes this moment in Ann's life so pivotal is the sheer weight of what it represented. Her ability to defy the odds and gain the affection of a man like Billy, despite the immense societal and familial forces working against her. It was a testament to her determination, her ability to charm and persevere in the face of open hostility. But it was also the beginning of a larger battle, a fight for acceptance in a world that was determined to shut her out, a battle that would come to define much of her life. Against all odds, and against his mother's vehement disapproval, Billy fell for Ann. Their relationship was a defiant statement in a world that thrived on rigid class divisions and unwritten rules of exclusivity. When Billy married Ann in the early 1940s, it was seen as a scandalous union that sent shockwaves through New York's elite circles. Ann, a showgirl with no pedigree to speak of, had managed to secure a place within one of the city's most prestigious families. The media took notice of this unlikely romance, painting it as a Cinderella story with a dramatic twist. Public fascination with Ann soared, and she became the subject of whispers and speculation. Fans of her beauty admired her boldness, while detractors dismissed her as an opportunist who had charmed her way into wealth. Despite the fairy tale appearance of her marriage to Billy, Ann's story was already layered with complexity and tension. The challenges she faced, both from society and within her new family, were a foreshadowing of the turbulent years to come. Her rise to prominence, while enviable on the surface, came at a cost that would haunt her for the rest of her life. There is a story about Ann, but it is unconfirmed. One evening, Anne received an enigmatic invitation to a highly exclusive gala hosted by a secret society rumored to include the city's most powerful figures. The event was cloaked in mystery, with guests required to wear masks. Anne, intrigued by the potential connections, saw this as an opportunity to cement her place among the elite. At the gala, Anne's presence was magnetic. Dressed in a custom gown adorned with shimmering crystals, she moved through the room with ease, her laughter and charm drawing people in. However, whispers began to circulate that Anne was not invited as a guest, but as a test. The society had heard of her ambition and sought to determine if she was truly one of them, or simply playing a role. Anne, sensing the undercurrent of suspicion, responded by outmaneuvering their expectations. She engaged in dazzling conversations about art, finance, and politics, leaving her skeptics spellbound. By the end of the night, one of the society's leaders reportedly remarked, "Perhaps she isn't one of us by birth, but she may yet surpass us all." Years later, rumors surfaced that the entire event had been staged by Anne herself to create the illusion of exclusivity and intrigue, solidifying her reputation as a master manipulator of social narratives. Ann Woodward's marriage to Billy Woodward, William Woodward Jr., may have been her golden ticket into New York's high society, but the reality of her new life was far from a fairy tale. At first, Anne found herself an outsider among the city's elite, who were notoriously unwelcoming to newcomers. Undeterred, Anne displayed an almost relentless determination to fit in. She studied the intricacies of high society etiquette, absorbed the latest fashion trends, and cultivated the connections she needed to secure her place. Her efforts paid off, and by the late 1940s, she was mingling with some of the most iconic figures of the time, including Truman Capote and his infamous Swans, a group of impeccably styled and influential socialites who epitomized wealth and elegance. However, this polished exterior masked the turmoil that was brewing in Anne and Billy's marriage. What had begun as a passionate and rebellious union quickly descended into a toxic cycle of public arguments and mutual betrayals. The couple's frequent quarrels became a source of gossip among their peers, often playing out in full view of other high society figures, adding layers of humiliation to their already fragile relationship. Behind closed doors, the dysfunction only deepened. Both Anne and Billy engaged in extramarital affairs, fueling jealousy and mistrust that further eroded their bond. Billy's frustration eventually led him to demand a divorce, a move that threatened to strip Anne of the social status she had fought so hard to achieve. Desperate to maintain her position, Anne adamantly refused, clinging to her role as Mrs. Woodward despite the emotional toll. The strain of their crumbling marriage took a heavy toll on Anne. Isolated by her failing relationship and the pressures of fitting into high society, she turned to alcohol and prescription pills as an escape. While these vices may have temporarily dulled her pain, they only deepened the cracks in her already shaky foundation. Anne's marriage to Billy was emblematic of the darker side of the glamorous life she had pursued. Beneath the glittering chandeliers and elegant soirees was a story of emotional isolation, strained ambition, and a relentless quest for acceptance. This chapter of Anne's life laid bare the high cost of her ascent into society's upper echelons, a cost that would continue to haunt her in the years to come. In 1955, the Woodward household became the center of one of the most shocking tragedies to ever grip New York high society. The night began innocuously enough, with Anne and Billy attending an elegant party hosted by the Duke of Windsor and Wallis Simpson. It was the kind of glamorous event that defined their social calendar: lavish, exclusive, and teeming with the city's elite. But beneath the polished surface, tension simmered. The couple had reportedly been discussing a recent string of burglaries in their neighborhood, a topic that struck fear into their privileged yet vulnerable world. In this context, Billy mentioned keeping a gun by his bedside for protection, and Ann revealed she did the same. What unfolded next remains one of the most debated moments in socialite history. Sometime after returning home and retreating to their separate bedrooms, a habit indicative of their strained marriage, Ann was jolted awake by her barking dog. Alarmed by a noise she claimed was coming from the roof, she grabbed the shotgun she kept nearby and began to search for the intruder she feared was lurking in their home. Moments later, she fired a shot. The horrifying reality of what she had done hit immediately. The intruder was her own husband, Billy. The man who once stood as a symbol of wealth and status now lay lifeless, the victim of a tragic misunderstanding. Or so Ann claimed. Billy's death sent shockwaves through their glittering social world. The once revered Woodward name became synonymous with scandal, and Ann quickly found herself under a glaring public microscope. The authorities launched an investigation, and Ann's account of self-defense was met with widespread skepticism. Rumors of a troubled marriage, mutual infidelity, and Ann's reluctance to agree to Billy's request for divorce fueled speculation that her actions may have been premeditated. No matter what Ann claimed as her reasoning, the cold, hard truth was undeniable. She had killed her husband. Yet in the chaotic and surreal hours that followed the apparent accident, unsettling details began to emerge, pointing in another direction. After calling the authorities and an ambulance, Ann had the presence of mind to make one more call to her high-powered attorney, Sol Rosenblatt. From that moment, the situation shifted dramatically. Even as police sought to question her immediately after the shooting, Ann was effectively shielded. Overwhelmed and distraught, she reportedly muttered repeatedly, "I thought it was the man who had been here before." At Rosenblatt's insistence, authorities transported Ann to a Manhattan hospital instead of holding her for questioning. There, doctors had to sedate her to manage her erratic behavior and calm her down. By the time Ann regained her composure, the damage was already done. Crucial time had passed, and the investigation had lost its immediacy. Police were only able to formally question Ann 48 hours after Billy's death. When the press learned of this delay, they erupted in outrage. The public was incensed by what appeared to be blatant preferential treatment for one of Manhattan's glittering socialites. This perceived bias didn't just anger the media, it also fueled suspicions about Ann's true intentions. To many, the delayed questioning and the intervention of her influential lawyer seemed like clear signs of guilt rather than innocence. The controversy only added to the growing storm surrounding Ann, transforming her from a tragic widow to a figure of suspicion in the court of public opinion. The trial that followed was nothing short of sensational. Headlines branded it the shooting of the century, and every detail of Ann's life was dissected by a public hungry for drama. Despite the damning evidence of a fractured marriage and mounting suspicion, Ann maintained that she had mistaken Billy for a burglar. After a short deliberation, the jury delivered a verdict that shocked many. Ann was acquitted, with her actions deemed an unfortunate but justifiable act of self-defense. However, while Ann escaped legal punishment, she could not evade the court of public opinion. Accusations of bribery and conspiracy emerged almost immediately. Some claimed Ann had used her wealth and influence to sway the verdict, while others speculated that Billy's mother, Elizabeth, had paid to protect the family's name. The whispers of foul play, combined with Ann's growing notoriety, led to her swift ostracization from high society. Left with little choice, Anne fled to Europe, seeking refuge from the relentless scrutiny, but the glittering world she once fought so hard to enter was no longer within reach. Stripped of her social standing and haunted by her past, Anne's attempts to rebuild her life were met with failure. In the eyes of many, she would always be the woman who had killed her husband, a reputation she could never escape. Anne's life, particularly after the tragedy with Billy, drew inevitable comparisons to other infamous figures in history, with the public and media alike weaving her story into the fabric of legendary scandals. Critics and admirers frequently likened her to Evelyn Nesbit, the iconic beauty at the center of one of America's first high-profile crimes of passion. Nesbit's rise from a showgirl to a household name, followed by her involvement in a scandalous love triangle that ended in murder, was a cautionary tale of how ambition and circumstance could elevate someone to fame while simultaneously paving the road to their downfall. Similarly, Anne's story resonated as a real-life tragedy, where beauty and ambition collided with betrayal and scandal. Both women were seen as embodying the archetype of the femme fatale, a symbol of allure and danger wrapped into one. For Anne, this image was reinforced by her life's trajectory, a humble upbringing, a meteoric rise into wealth and status, and a dramatic fall that captivated and horrified the public in equal measure. Media coverage during Anne's lifetime capitalized on these parallels. Newspapers and gossip columns dissected her life, presenting her as a modern-day version of Nesbit, a woman whose choices and circumstances had entrapped her in a web of intrigue and heartbreak. Headlines played on the dichotomy of her persona, the glamorous, defiant socialite versus the tragic figure shrouded in scandal. These portrayals only deepened the public's fascination, creating an image of Anne as someone who was simultaneously admired, pitied, and judged. Fans, too, expressed a mix of emotions. Letters to editors of magazines debated whether Anne was a victim of her circumstances or an architect of her own misfortune. Some sympathized with her struggles, viewing her as a survivor of societal pressure and personal loss, while others criticized her for what they saw as calculated ambition. Social gatherings and radio programs buzzed with debates about her culpability, and her story became a topic of endless speculation. By the time Truman Capote further immortalized Anne in La Côte Basque, the comparison to Nesbit became even more pronounced. Both women's lives were dissected and sensationalized, turning them into cultural figures whose stories transcended their personal experiences. Capote's biting portrayal of Anne cemented her place in the public imagination as a glamorous yet doomed figure, a symbol of the costs of ambition and the unrelenting scrutiny of high society. Anne's story, like Nesbit's, became a mirror reflecting the public's fascination with the intersection of beauty, power, and tragedy. Her life, as captured by the media and immortalized in gossip and literature, served as both a cautionary tale and a compelling drama, ensuring her place in history as one of society's most haunting figures. During her self-imposed exile in Europe, Ann Woodward attempted to rebuild her life away from the scandal that had consumed her in New York. However, her efforts to reclaim some semblance of happiness often led her into relationships with younger men, including Klaus von Bülow, a socialite over a decade her junior. While these connections may have provided temporary companionship, they also added fuel to the whispers that continued to follow her. Critics and gossip columnists painted Anne as a woman desperately clinging to youth and relevance, using these relationships to fill the void left by her shattered reputation. Yet it wasn't her romantic escapades that dealt the most significant blow to her already fragile social standing. It was her encounter with Truman Capote. Known for his sharp wit and penchant for scandal, Capote had once been a prominent figure in the very world Anne sought to escape. Their paths crossed during one fateful evening in Europe, and the interaction would cement her place in Capote's crosshairs. Capote, who thrived on exposing the vulnerabilities of society's elite, reportedly took great pleasure in gossiping about Anne's downfall. He nicknamed her Mrs. Bang Bang, a cruel reference to the infamous shooting of her husband, Billy Woodward. This moniker became yet another scar on Anne's already bruised legacy as it spread among high society and media circles. The ultimate betrayal came when Capote published La Côte Basque, a thinly veiled expose that included a biting portrayal of Anne. In the story, she was depicted as a malicious gold digger who had killed her husband for financial gain. Capote's portrayal was laced with exaggeration and contempt, but it reignited public scorn for Anne and reopened old wounds she had tried to leave behind. For Anne, the publication of La Côte Basque was more than just an attack on her character. It was the final straw in her descent into isolation. The socialite who once commanded attention at New York's grandest events now found herself increasingly ostracized, even in the circles she had tried to infiltrate in Europe. Capote's sharp pen and her tarnished reputation ensured that she could no longer escape the shadows of her past. This episode highlights the relentless nature of gossip and how the court of public opinion can become inescapable, especially for those who once lived under its glow. Anne's encounter with Capote wasn't just disastrous. It was emblematic of her life's tragic arc, where every attempt to move forward seemed to pull her deeper into the mire of her past. Ann Woodward's life ended in October 1975 with a cyanide pill, a tragic conclusion to a story already fraught with scandal and despair. Her death came just as Truman Capote's damning expose of the New York socialite world, La Côte Basque, was about to be published, a piece that would have further immortalized her darkest moments. For Anne, the prospect of enduring public humiliation again was seemingly too much to bear. Her death reverberated far beyond her own life, intensifying the tragedy that had plagued the Woodward family for decades. Her mother-in-law, Elizabeth, delivered a cold and cutting remark upon hearing the news. "She shot my son, and Truman just murdered her." This chilling statement captured the bitterness and resentment that had defined their fraught relationship, even in death. Ann Woodward's death cast a long shadow over her children, leaving behind a legacy of pain and heartbreak. Her youngest son, Jimmy, was already battling severe addiction and mental health issues, struggles that only deepened as he grew older. Jimmy's troubles began to take root after his service in Vietnam, an experience that left him emotionally scarred. The weight of his parents' tumultuous lives, marked by scandal, tragedy, and public scrutiny, only added to his growing despair. In 1972, Jimmy's struggles reached a breaking point in 1972 when he attempted to take his own life by jumping from a 10th-story apartment. Though he survived with severe injuries, his emotional wounds remained unhealed. For the next 6 years, Jimmy struggled to navigate a life marked by pain and hopelessness. The darkness that had loomed over the Woodward family seemed inescapable, and in 1978, at the young age of 30, Jimmy ended his life, succumbing to the despair that had haunted him for years. Not only that, in 1994, her eldest son, Woody, began exhibiting severe signs of mental illness. His wife, Lisa, filed court papers describing disturbing behavior, stating that Woody often slept on park benches and spoke in incomprehensible languages. "I don't want to use the word crazy," Lisa's lawyer remarked at the time, but there were episodes. Woody also battled compulsive infidelity, a behavior reminiscent of his parents. In a cruel twist, Woody reportedly taunted Lisa by leaving behind love notes from his various mistresses, and occasionally even physical evidence of his affairs. It was as if the curse of his family's tumultuous past continued to unravel, one heartbreaking thread at a time. Then, in 1999, the final act of Ann Woodward's tragic saga played out. That year, her eldest son, William Woodward III, took his own life, marking a somber end to the once illustrious Woodward family line. It was a devastating culmination of decades of pain, scandal, and unresolved trauma. Ann Woodward, once a swan of New York high society, had lived the American dream only to watch it spiral into a relentless nightmare. The echoes of her life's tragedies continued to resonate long after her death, leaving behind a story as cautionary as it is unforgettable. Ann Woodward's life was one of sharp contrasts, glittering highs and devastating lows. Her story reminds us of the fragility of fame and the weight of secrets that refuse to stay buried. From the shocking events that ended her husband's life to the tragic ripple effects on her family, Ann's journey is a cautionary tale of ambition, betrayal, and the relentless pursuit of acceptance. What do you think of Ann Woodward's incredible yet heartbreaking life? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for more stories that delve deep into the hidden lives of history's most fascinating figures.